So the dog and I are up here at the top of Porter's Hill. We're about as high up in Sandy Bay as you can possibly go. Down there you can see the majority of Sandy Bay, and in the distance as the Tasman Bridge. Then there's the zinc works, and that mound in the far is Mount Direction. We've come here because of not just one, but about half a dozen buildings that have been here. Most of them are gone now. They've been destroyed by the ravages of time and bushfire. There's the famous Dorney house, and that's built literally on the foundations of Fort Nelson, which was a giant gun embankment that was put here to protect the city from a fear of Russian invasion, an invasion that never came. There's all these ruins, bits of stuff. You can see there are all these bricks and there's concrete, and there are all these rusting poles and bits of metal about the place. It's a somewhat underexplored part of Hobart, perhaps because it's hard to get to. Maybe not everybody's interested, but in my opinion, for the urban explorer, this is about as good as it gets in Tasmania. The view's world class. In 1907, Fort Nelson was constructed 1,000 feet above the city. An American-made pit traction engine was used to haul the two 6-inch guns to the summit. The awkward and steep gradient of 1 to the 7, the total weight of the guns was just short of 50 tonnes. That process having taken about 3 weeks. The guns themselves were Russian Mk8 rifled breech loading, length 23 feet, projectile weight 100 pounds, muzzle velocity 2,439 feet per second, firing weight 6 rounds per minute. The artillery needed to be given practice time. Shipping was warned to be 1 mile to the right and left of the line of fire for a distance of 10,000 yards from the battery. In 1910, Field Marshal Herbert Kitchener inspected the fort. More than anything else, he was taken aback by the outstanding beauty from the summit. He was photographed as a passenger riding back down the hill. Lord Kitchener was probably the most powerful person to ever visit Tasmania, right up until 2014 when Chinese President Xi Jinping attended the island. There were storage buildings, officers' quarters, soldiers' barracks, huts for socialising, latrines and caretakers' homes. Only a few images of all this survives. The dog's here, surveying Sandy Bay and beyond, as am I. This is a foundation wall, or an outer wall. It's about all that's left in these sections. Fires keep coming through Sandy Bay and Hobart more generally. It's part of the reality of living in Tasmania and Australia, maybe across the whole world. The bush or the forest, it all burns. Particularly true in Australia because of eucalyptus. It's designed through evolution to catch a light. So there's a few of these poles up here. They line the road on the way up. Now I'm 6'4", so you can see that's pretty tall. There was something screwed on the top. I don't know what it is. I'm guessing that it helped provide electricity because they did have power up here at different points. But I don't know. Maybe it's a flagpole. It's certainly driven deep into the stone. It's just one of these things that makes the place that bit more enigmatic. What I'm standing on here, to me, looks like an underground bunker, but it could have just been an underground water storage area. If you're going to have a bunch of blokes living on the top of a hill, they're going to need water to drink and to bathe. And you keep water stored underground because there's less evaporation there. And that might explain this device here that could be used to lower buckets and collect water and bring it back up. But I don't know what this thing is here. It's something that falls outside my understanding. I just don't really know what it is. Someone out there knows, but right now it's not me. I do, however, know that the dog is having a good time. Fort Nelson replaced all of the earlier gun emplacements around Hobart. This saw things through to the end of World War II also, at which point Fort Nelson was partially dismantled and abandoned. The cannons were taken back down the hill and away to Fort direction, which is still occupied by the Army now. The specifics of what became of the weapons seems to be lost to us now. In 1949, Esmond Dorney purchased what was left of Fort Nelson and the surrounding 31 hectares of land from the Commonwealth Government. The great architect got to work. Dorney House, as it is now, is not the sum of the buildings placed on the top. The first two, built in 1949 and 1966, were destroyed by separate fires. A rare image containing the earlier buildings. The 1949 building is believed to be the first glass house of its type ever constructed. The remaining building today was erected after a fire in 1978. Esmond Dorney died in 1991, leaving a legacy of buildings across Hobart. But to some, his pinnacle achievement may be the one at Fort Nelson. There were plans to put the whole hill up for a 78-lot housing subdivision, but significant public outcry stopped this from happening. The Dorney family, who wanted the site preserved, eventually sold to the Hobart City Council in 2006. It is one of the great Tasmanian monuments. Better than being practical for living, it is an object of fine beauty. Dorney House on Fort Nelson. There is another Acropolis.